this meeting is now streaming live on YouTube, it says.
Yeah, it should be going any minute here.
All right, yeah. And this meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
There we go.
Hey, slight delay apparently.
Yeah,
There's
it's a little
typically
bit
about a
of
20-second delay that comes between streaming to YouTube or streaming to Facebook.
Mhm.
Okay, well, yeah, YouTube's up and running and we're now recording, so
Okay.
you're ready to start.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome everyone to the Tuesday, May 19th Alpine City Planning Commission meeting. And this is being shown on YouTube, as we just mentioned, where you can get to the direct link for the city's website. Let's go ahead and start. We have from Planning Commission with us today, 2 new members of Planning Commission that we want to welcome, Ed Bush and Troy Slade. And thank you guys for joining. We're really happy to have you here. We have John McKay and Ethan Allen, and Sylvia cannot be here. I believe we're also missing Alan McDonald, and hopefully he'll be able to join us. But we do have a quorum, so we're okay to continue with any business we need to. From the city, we have Austin Roy, we have Jed Muhlstein, and Marla Fox. And then who else is joining us here? I forgot. Anyway, we have a guest with us. Sorry, I can't remember your name, guest. And Paul Croft, looks like Paul's joined. So, oh, Miles, that's right, thank you. And then others can be watching from YouTube. So we'll go ahead and start. Alan McDonald is going to give us an opening prayer, and then I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Except for that Alan is the person who's missing. Yeah. just takes me a minute. So John, would you mind doing that?
Sure.
Thanks.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful this evening to be gathered together through this teleconference for the Planning Commission meeting of the Alpine, City of Alpine. We're grateful for the opportunities which we have to serve and deal with the needs of the citizens of our great community. We pray that we might be able to take care of the business before us in a manner that would be pleasing to thee and to those whom we serve. And we ask for these things now and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Austin, do you have a flag image that you're ready to share for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah, hold on, bear with me one moment.
Okay, no problem. And then when he has that shared, we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
In just a moment.
Okay, so please stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks. So now we enter the portion where there's public comment. And if there's anyone who's in the meeting who has either submitted public comment to Austin or would like to post public comment in the YouTube chat, or anyone here who's joining us in the Zoom meeting, if you have any public comment that you would like to make on items that are not on the agenda, this is the time for that. Okay. While we wait and see if there's anything else, I would like if Ed and Troy could just take just a couple minutes and just give us a quick introduction of yourself so we know a little bit about you, and maybe those who are watching or follow up on this meeting will be able to also know who you are. So Ed, do you want to start?
Sure. Happy to be here. I've been in Alpine for about 4 years or so, and retired actually for about four and a half years. Been at Alpine about 4 years. I'm a physicist, electrical engineer by education. I spent most of my career working in aerospace. Things I wish I could tell you about, but they won't allow me to do so.
You'd have to kill us.
Right, right. Yeah. So we retired here. My wife and I, Judy. Unfortunately, Judy passed away this last February.
Oh, I did not know that.
Part of that. While we were here, we have appreciated the beauty of Alpine. One of the things that we did start was this thing called the Alpine Nature Center. And that's an online presence where we have trail maps and hikes and document the flora and what's blooming in Lambert Park, and just try to give some appreciation to the beauty that we're surrounded here by living in Alpine. So great to be here, and I hope
Thank you.
That's going to be a good service to the city.
Thank you. Yeah, I love your foundation that you started. Thank you very much. Troy?
Well, we've been here about 17 years. Me and my family have 6 kids. Absolutely. I'm sure just like everybody else, just love Alpine. It's terrific. Love the trails, love to mountain bike and hike around. Professionally, I produced a TV show I do video production. And so I produced a TV show for BYU called The Story Trek. I don't know, maybe some of you have seen
Yeah.
it. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so that was a lot of fun. Traveled the country and, met random people and loved it. Just kind of at a stage of life now to where, I'm looking forward to serving. And I'm excited to be on this committee with all of you, and just excited about it. So.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, we look forward to the diversity and the insight that you guys will bring to the Planning Commission. So thank you very much. Oops, let's go ahead and move forward then. Was there any public comment that came through, Austin?
Okay, we have a public comment for our first agenda item, but nothing.
Okay,
or
nothing from the open time. Okay, so we'll close that. We'll move to our first agenda item, which is actually a public hearing. So before we start the public hearing portion of this, let's get an explanation of what it is, and then we will open for public hearing, and then afterwards discuss it.
Okay, so I will take this first agenda item and explain it to you all. This is an exception request to the road grade standards within our ordinance for the rigid Alpine. And this is in one of the future phases that has not been, the final phases has not been approved yet. So the developer is seeking an exception to our road grade standards. We actually just went through this about a month ago with Brookside Meadows, where our current street standard maximum grade at an intersection is 3%. And they were requesting a 5% exception to that intersection design. And the Planning Commission and City Council did approve that exception based on pretty much all the same reasons that we're going to talk about here tonight on this exception request.
Yeah.
But
Jed,
yeah.
Jed, I just want to point out that with 2 new members of the Planning Commission here, it won't hurt to give a full review.
Yeah, I'm going to give the full review.
Okay.
Yep. So our ordinance, it gives 3 criteria to be able to grant an exception to road design standards. And I've kind of got the majority of them underlined right there that you see in front of you. It has to be within the best interest of the city. It has to be based on generally accepted planning and engineering, and the exception cannot vary the zone, use, or lot size of the development. And so we have gone through and analyzed this exception request, and I will come back to each of these items as we move forward. So as far as the background goes, at the time this letter was written, we had 2 phases of development that had been given final approval, but as you know, at the last meeting, at the last city council meeting, phase 3 of the Rigid Alpine was also given final approval. And the area that we're looking at here, and Austin, maybe could you zoom down or scroll down to the very first exhibit? Yep, that one right there. So phases 1, 2, and 3 of this development are all basically the lower half of what you see here on the screen. You see Grove Drive, and you see the 90-degree bend at Grove Drive. From about there down is all approved final phases of the Rigid Alpine. So as the developer is considering moving forward and they're analyzing their road designs and stuff, they have determined that they can come up with a better road design for a future phase of development. And that's what you see highlighted in pink. So that pink area would be the lots affected by what they're requesting tonight. So as you can see, it affects a very large portion of the design of their development. So let's talk specifics on road grades. And actually, let's talk specifics on what they are requesting here. I want to just start out by saying that AASHTO, that is the American Society of State Highway Officials, that is a standard by which most of the nation follows and creates their ordinances to follow road design standards. Chapter 9 of the AASHTO book specifically talks about intersections and grades at intersections. And it says intersecting roads should be as flat as practical on those sections that are to be used for storage of stopped vehicles. And what storage of stopped vehicles means is anytime you have a lot of traffic, you'll have vehicles that are stopped at the intersection waiting for other vehicles to come. So those vehicles are being stored at the intersection before they can safely enter the intersection and navigate their way down the rest of the way of the road. But the particular intersection, and Austin, this is where I wish I go back to Exhibit A, sorry. This is where I wish I could scroll around and show you myself. The particular intersection that they're requesting this exception for is at Dean Court and Oakview Drive, and that's right there where Austin has his hand in the middle of the map. Speaking in terms of stored vehicles, this particular intersection design is more or less a secondary access route from the Rigid Alpine to the Alpine Cove subdivision. This connection is not meant to be made a thoroughfare. In other words, staff does not anticipate a very high volume of traffic to be using this connection. And so the need for storage of used vehicles, or the need for a storage area, I say used vehicles, the need for storage of vehicles at this intersection is actually very low. We don't anticipate vehicles to have to wait for traffic at this intersection ever, really. So because we don't need to worry about storage for stopped vehicles, AASHTO goes on to say that where conditions make such designs too expensive, grades should not exceed about 6%. And so AASHTO actually does give allowance to go above 3%, but they don't want you going above 6%. So I got curious about what other cities have in their road design standards. Draper has 5% maximum. Park City has 2%, Linden has 3%, and then several other cities are unspecified. And usually when a city is unspecified on their maximum grades, they just refer the design engineer to AASHTO and they'll follow the same criteria in order to design their roads. So kind of going back to the the reasons that we can grant an exception, the first one was generally accepted engineering. I would say generally accepted engineering for our area does allow for a 5% grade when we don't anticipate high volumes of traffic. Now, backing up a little bit in my report, I wanted to look specifically at what this exception does for this intersection. And Austin, if you could scroll down to Exhibit B, and I've got another window here open on my computer that I'm looking at here. And I wanted to show, that's the exhibit right there, thank you. So this exhibit kind of shows you the effect on grading that this exception request would have. So on the left side of your screen, right there at that intersection, you can see all the dark lines on the side of the road. Those dark lines on the edge of the road represent the amount of fill material and the width of fill material that it's going to take to build the road at the currently approved design. And that would be your 3% intersection design. That design is designed such that the road is literally 12 feet higher than existing grades currently. Now, if they were able to steepen the grade of the intersection on the right side of your screen there, I'm waiting for that to load. On the right side of the screen, you could see that the lines on the edge of the road are much smaller, and the maximum height of fill material with that design is only 4 feet. To me, this is kind of a no-brainer exception. Like, you either have a 12% or you have a road designed that has 12 feet of fill. That means all the houses in the area are going to also have to build up their homes and foundations 12 feet tall. And there's going to constantly be a need for more material to be hauled into the area to build up these lots, which just seems kind of backwards to me. That's not the way you should be building a house. And then on top of that, just the city infrastructure, if you have a road that's 12 feet high, sewer is typically only 9 feet deep. So they actually have to bring material in before they can even lay their sewer pipes and then continue to build. It's just not a very effective way of doing your construction. So yeah, I am in full support of this exception request. It makes a much cleaner, more constructible development. And on top of all that, it meets the criteria that is outlined in our code. It is generally accepted engineering. It doesn't change the use of the zone or change any lot sizes. And then what was the other one? There was 3 of them there. And it would serve the best interest of the city by reducing the amount of fill required to build the roads. I think that's about all I had to say on that. Let me go back. Austin, could you go to the staff recommendations? So, based on our analysis of their exception request, our findings for a positive motion by allowing them to go up to the 5% grade would allow the road to be built at a much lower elevation. The maximum height of the road would be 4.1 feet versus 12.75 feet. It would allow all the associated utilities and homes to be built at ground level or in the ground rather than on fill material. Yeah, and both of those above mentioned items would qualify for serving the best interest of the city. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the intersection is not expected to have a high volume of traffic. Therefore, it's not anticipated to need a large flat area to store vehicles waiting to enter or exit the intersection. Without the need to store vehicles, the need for flatter slopes mentioned by AASHTO is minimized. And then also upon reviewing other surrounding city codes, generally accepted planning and engineering does allow for the steeper grades as mentioned. So yeah, staff's recommendation would be to approve this exception request based on those findings. And I'm kind of curious what the public comment is on this
Okay,
item.
thanks. Yeah, let's go ahead and open the public hearing for the road grade exception request on the ridge at Alpine. And so, Austin, would you want to start with what we already have
Yeah, so
submitted
I'll
to us?
Go ahead and pull this up on the screen here. So this is from Mike and Corey Russin, and he says, regarding the north-south road to be built behind Alpine Cove, the developer is asking the city to make an exception on the road grade steepness, claiming it will be too expensive to bring in fill to build up the road to the proper grade for recommended safety standards. Since the owner has spent many years commercially selling the topsoil off this area and mining it for boulders, I think this is a frivolous request. The need to build up the road grade resulted from the removal and sale of soil and boulders in the first place, which lowered the elevation 10 to 20 feet in some areas. Additionally, large sorted piles of soil and rock remain on site, prepared for commercial offsite sales, that might provide the necessary material for bringing the road grade up to specifications. So that's the
Okay,
topic.
thank you. So that's from Mike and Corey Russin. Do we have any other comments that have come into YouTube as chats?
I'm checking YouTube right now, and I do not see any comments.
Okay, so let's go ahead as part of the public hearing. I guess we'll go ahead and close the public hearing now. So let's close the public hearing. And then wanted to give Paul a chance to reply to that public comment, if he had any reply he wanted to make.
This is Kyle Spencer speaking on behalf of the development.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on that public hearing response by the Russins, and the actual model that we modeled to evaluate the roadway improvements, I guess, by lowering the grades. We're actually using the pre-graded surface that would predate any of the import or export of this area. And when we've spot checked some of those excavation elevations in the proximity of Dean Court, there is no cut or fills that exceed 2 feet in this roadway section. So I believe that what we have modeled actually represents the actual roadway pre-excavation and post-excavation. The other item I wanted to point out too is the previous design on Oakview Drive. That's the connection road from Alpine Cove Drive to Dean Court. If we were to keep the original, that 3% across the intersection, I believe Oakview Drive, in addition, would have maintained that higher elevation of roughly 12 feet of import required for that minor road, that minor roadway connection, of which I believe the new design greatly improves, you know, the impact of that minor road connection.
Does Oakview Drive currently exist?
It does not. I'll let Shane comment on that, but there's on Oakview, Alpine Cove, there's the existing homes on the north and the south of that roadway that has been dedicated for the use of the public, but the road has not been constructed.
And who's constructing that portion of the road?
The city would actually I shouldn't speak too quick on that. I actually think we were requiring the developer to finish that, but
Okay,
I'm just gonna say I'm unsure at this point. I know it
Okay.
was talked about in past meetings.
okay. All right, so let's open it up for questions from the Planning Commission.
I have
Where-
one.
Uh-huh,
And I guess this is to Jed and to Paul and company. So I took a walk up there yesterday just to see what was going on in there. And there is a fairly large excavation pit that's been put into the property where they've extracted the material, I guess, where the boulders have come from or whatever. So I guess my question is any of this being driven because we've excavated so much out of the hillside that it's making it difficult to have the roadway at the right height?
I'd like to comment on this. Once again, this is Kyle Spencer, and I believe the excavation that you're seeing where they have the crusher in operation is actually located where the future cul-de-sac will be, which is north of this intersection by 300 or 400 feet. And so no, that's actually either way that this roadway design, the cul-de-sac still will require that excavation down where they've harvested the rocks and the boulders. So that, like I say, that's not right at this location. That no, that did not dictate the requirement here of the roadway grade. It was mainly to improve the roadway import actually south of Oakview Drive connection to Dean Court, of which is pretty native, pretty natural. They haven't regraded that section of Dean Court at all. I hope that helps answer that question or concern.
Thank you.
I think it would be nice for many people who have been watching that property to understand if there are any policies on landowners mining on their own property, selling the topsoil, the rocks and boulders like that. I think that has been a concern to people who've watched it. So it might be nice to clarify any of our ordinances regarding that, if there are any. Jed or Austin, do you know of anything that prohibits a landowner for doing kind of like a pit?
No, I mean, you can't have a commercial operation in a residential zone. And we have talked to the developer about this a few times. Where they are digging is within that cul-de-sac area that will require them to excavate down to build that cul-de-sac. And it's common practice in all development. When you dig down and you find boulders, you've got to get rid of them somehow. And the same thing with topsoil. When you remove the topsoil to build the roadway, they have the right to get rid of that topsoil somehow. So I think it's done in every development in the city. It's not considered a commercial operation. Now, if they went outside that roadway areas where they weren't required to excavate for the road, then yes, that's where you would draw the line and say, okay, now you're turning this into a commercial operation. This isn't allowed, and this is where you would be stopped. So I don't know, say for example, there was actual golden nuggets under there. Like, you're not just going to pick the golden nuggets up and set them on the property and walk away. Like, you're going to do something with it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I just think that would be nice to clarify in the public comment. So are you saying though that that a developer should only be doing it in the roadways as part of the development? But what if a landowner is doing it over large portions of their land, removing topsoil, selling?
Yeah, that wouldn't be allowed. That'd be considered a commercial operation.
Okay. And you're saying that has not happened with this property?
No, that's actually what they were doing several years ago, and they were stopped.
Oh, okay. So I think that's the comment I guess I would like to have brought up then.
Yeah.
That was happening and was stopped.
Yeah, they were stopped.
Okay. So I think that will probably clarify a little bit more of the public comment as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Any other questions? One question I had was when you show the exhibit of the pink area of the lots that are affected, how are those lots all affected? Are you just saying because the grade of the road will be different or the elevation of the road will be different amongst all of that?
Yes, that is the extent of the area that would be affected by this exception request. Like I made this exhibit just to try to portray how big of a deal this is for the development. It really does affect a large area and it affects it for the better. So that's why I was trying to.
Okay, and but the grade exception is only at this intersection.
Correct, but it changes grades.
It changes the elevation of the rest of the road.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions that anyone has? Okay. So I noticed on the agenda, Austin, that you just have a public hearing. There's not an agenda item for anything following that, but I'm assuming we're looking for a motion along with the public hearing. So
that's correct. Yeah. So
okay.
On your cover sheet here, we have a recommended motion.
Yeah. Okay. So any further discussion? If not, if somebody has a motion that they would like to make.
Make a motion.
Yeah, did someone have a question? No. Okay, go ahead.
All right, I motion to recommend approval of the 5% design exception request based on the following. The 5% design would serve the best interest of the city by reducing the amount of fill required to build the road. The request follows generally accepted planning and engineering, and the request does not vary the zone, use, or lot size within the development.
Okay, we have a motion by Ethan Allen. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Okay, we have a second by John. And all those who are in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 Any who are opposed to this motion, say nay. Okay, so the motion passes. And we'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is a public hearing on Ordinance 2020-09, the Floodplain Ordinance Update. So we'll go ahead and allow Jed or Austin.
Yeah.
Okay, Jed.
As well. So, back in January or so, we started to make some ordinance changes for this, but June 19th of this year, FEMA is coming out with a new flood insurance rate map, not just for Alpine, but for all of Utah County. And in preparation for that, FEMA has reviewed all the city's floodplain ordinances to make sure that they are in compliance with their national flood insurance program. So all this is before us is basically FEMA's red line on our own floodplain ordinance in order for us to comply with their national floodplain insurance or national flood insurance program. I want to say, well, I don't know how to say this other than the fact that if we don't pass this, we're not going to be included in the national flood insurance program anymore. So it's kind of a big deal. So you could see that they added a couple definitions in there. They added a definition for the base flood elevation. They adjusted some of our definitions. The flood insurance study needed some adjustments. They had some specific zone boundary callouts that just needed some changes. And then kind of the bigger one is the city needs to specifically call out this new insurance or this new study that was for all of Utah County that was completed and is going to be adopted by FEMA. So that needs to be called out. And then just a couple other revised language. sections. So, I mean, I could go through and read all those, but essentially this is what FEMA is telling us that we have to do in order to continue to be part of this program. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
what else.
No, that's great. Okay, thanks, Jed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing portion of this. And if anyone has any comment on it, that is in our meeting or did I hear any? Oh, it's probably just an echo from myself. Okay, Austin, were there any public comments posted on YouTube or in email?
Yeah, let's see. No, I don't have anything right now. No.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion of that. And then if anyone has any questions, we can talk about those now. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And
on page 4, the first green insertion, is it really a firm that has been made, or is it supposed to be D firm?
Let's see. I'm not sure what section you're talking about there, John.
Let me curse out and give you a number here.
Oh,
Okay.
page 4, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it actually is supposed to be digital. It's supposed to be exactly like they've got that. A flood insurance rate map, that's what
Okay, got
we
it.
use. And they're making it available digitally. So yes, that is correct.
Okay.
okay. Any other questions, or if anyone has a motion that they would like to make? For Ed and Troy, just so you know, I cannot make a motion. So I depend on the rest of you guys to make motion. I'm not saying you need to make a motion on your first night, but in case you're wondering why I'm always asking for it and not doing anything.
I'll make the motion. I motion to recommend approval of Ordinance 2020-09 as proposed.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. We have a second by Ethan Allen. All those in favor of this motion say aye.
Hi.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, we'll pass that. And we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the public hearing, Ordinance 2020-10, retaining wall irrigation. So if we can have that presented.
Jane, was that last motion done by Ed Bush?
Yes, that was done by Ed and it was seconded by Ethan Allen.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get a presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll take this one as well. So Alpine City adopted a new retaining wall ordinance. Oh, I can't remember when it was. It was 3 or 4 years ago. And a section of the ordinance talks about drip irrigation. But all it says in the ordinance was, and this is the part that's crossed out there in red, it just said shrubs shall be watered by drip irrigation to minimize erosion by property owner, not by Alpine City. And you don't really think too hard about some of these things until you actually run into the situation. That sentence is written horribly. So Brookside Meadows was just recently approved, and they actually had a retaining wall that met this criteria. And so they had to provide to us a plan that had landscaping and it had drip irrigation. Well, then we started having all these questions. Well, who's going to pay to drip irrigate it? Who's going to maintain it? And we looked at what our ordinance says, and it was just really vague. And so this was our stab at trying to really clearly show who would be responsible for paying for maintaining, installing all of that drip irrigation. So this is the verbiage we came up with. In this situation with Brookside Meadows, it obviously works out great because we had Brookside Meadows in mind when we're writing this. But if there's any other situations that we can think of where we want to change the language here, we're open to that. But I'm just going to read this language. Shrubs shall be drip irrigated to minimize erosion. The responsibility of drip irrigation resides with the property owner on which the majority of the structure is built. If the majority of the structure is built on private or public open space where no HOA is present, a pressurized irrigation service and drip irrigation system shall be installed by the developer, and Alpine City will be responsible for the drip irrigation maintenance and operation after the warranty period expires. So if that wall is on somebody's actual property, then the property owner would be responsible to maintain the drip irrigation there. In the Brookside Meadows case, a portion of the wall actually is on a lot, but the majority of the wall is in private open space where they actually do not anticipate having an HOA. And so in that situation, it would fall under Alpine City's responsibility to maintain it. But you see, we added verbiage in there to make sure that the developer installs, and we put the after warranty period expires part because we want the developer to be responsible to make sure those plants are established and alive and growing before the city takes the responsibility over. But like I said, if you guys can see of another way to say things that may be clearer, or if you can think of another situation that we're not grasping here, then we're open to it. But we feel like this one works pretty good, at least for what we've seen thus far.
How's the warranty period determined?
The warranty period begins when the city accepts the development and approves, not just approves the development, it's when the city accepts all of their improved infrastructure. So once they're done with construction, we release their bonds. We keep a certain amount of the bond, 10%, for a warranty period, and we make sure that the roads that were built and infrastructure and everything is good for at least a year after it's completed. And so the warranty period is typically a year, and the warranty period doesn't even start until everything is constructed and done.
Okay, so there's no need to define what warranty period means in here. That's already a clear enough definition in the code. Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's what I wanted to check. Okay, so let's open the public hearing to this. And if anyone has comment or has submitted comment through YouTube or through email, we'll do those comments now. Are there any of those? Okay, I assume not.
No comments.
No comments. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we are open for discussion between the Planning Commission members now. Any questions or concerns? Do you see anything that this may potentially leave out, or?
I got a question for Jed, and it relates back to the previous development that we were just talking about. There's that one lot that's at lot 70, I think it's 72, that winds its way up the side of the hillside and then sits on the top. I know there's a lot of terracing that's going in on that. Is that all being done on their private land, or because it borders very closely to open space?
Yes, so the very first sentence of this item F says for terraced walls viewable from the nearest public right-of-way. So currently the nearest public right-of-way is at the bottom of the hill from that lot 72. They would not be required to do this. Basically, if your wall isn't right on the edge of a public road, we're not going to make you install landscaping in between the walls.
I thought, okay, I thought that the purpose of this was to break it up so that from a distance, it didn't look like one, you know how we looked at it like in Heritage Hills where some of those are set back, but from a distance, it actually looks like a huge wall. And so
So we can go look at that lot 72. I actually don't think those walls are visible from the nearest public right-of-way.
Mhm.
If they are, that application is actually currently under review. So we can,
I think
yeah.
I think
We
Ed
can
brings
look
up a
at
really
that.
good point there then, because yeah, the purpose of that was to avoid the look of a big, massive flat.
Yep.
As well as the safety. So I would love it if you could check that out and let us know.
Yep. And just side note, they are having a hard time making the engineering work with rocks for that wall. So
Okay.
it may not be a rocked retaining wall in the end anyways.
Okay.
So that one is still up in the air.
Okay.
But I agree. And it is the point. The whole point of this section is to break up the wall and
Yeah.
make it not be one big sheer rock thing that you're looking at.
Yeah. And it will blend in and not take away from the the view. So great. Good point. Any other comment on this? Okay.
I guess I have a little concern. Well, so one concern I have is how much service do you anticipate on these systems for the city to do? Because I mean, really, the developer is creating this development, and then the city is being asked to maintain something afterwards.
Yeah, it's
Wasn't there before.
In the Brookside Meadows case, it's actually very minimal. The shrubs that they are proposing are perennial and native to our area, and supposedly, I'm told, don't require any drip irrigation or watering at all after they are established. So that's my kind of maintenance right there.
Yeah. What kind of shrub is that?
Oh, I can't remember exactly what it was called.
Sagebrush.
Yeah. No, it was more of a, well.
It's okay. It's
yeah,
okay.
I can't remember, but
That's,
no,
yeah.
that's definitely
That's a
we're
good point.
definitely keeping low key maintenance in mind for sure.
Yeah, the city definitely does not want to take on extra maintenance projects, and that's something that we definitely watch for.
Nope.
Okay, any other comments, concerns? Okay, then we'll look for someone to make a motion on that.
I'll make a motion. I motion that we recommend adopting the amendments to Article 2.32.030 of the Alpine City Development Code pertaining to the irrigation of plantings on retaining walls as proposed by staff.
Okay, motion by John. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second by Troy Slade. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed to the motion, say nay. Okay, so that passes unanimously. And I thought that was worded well. Nice job, Jed. So we're the next public hearing, we're just having fun tonight, is Ordinance 2020-11 Planter Strip Requirements. This is an update referring to the tree guide that we implemented. So Jed, are you on this one too?
I could, yeah. I'm on a roll tonight.
Yeah, you might as well keep it going.
Yeah, this one's pretty simple. We adopted our tree guidebook, it's been a year ago about, and we have been meaning to look through the ordinance and reference that adoption somewhere, and we just ran across the perfect spot for it the other day. We have a planter strip requirements section of our ordinance that currently says trees shall be planted at least every 50 feet if you so choose to do trees. Street trees shall be selected from the, and it used to say approved list available from city staff. I'm not aware of any list we ever had. So now we have our tree guide, and so we're simply referencing the Alpine City Tree Guide. So this one's pretty simple.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, do we have any public comment on this? Any YouTube comments or anyone who's emailed in?
I have not seen anything, no.
Okay, all right. We will close the public hearing. portion and move into any kind of discussion, questions, concerns, or a motion.
Do we need to say anything about, like, I mean, what's the Alpine City Tree Guide? Like, I don't think anybody knows what that is. Do we need to say like where we find it, or where that can be found, or I don't know. I'm just.
Mhm.
No, it's so similar to other specifications that the city has. So for example, we have Alpine City standards and specifications.
Okay.
When we talk about those in the ordinance, we simply just call it Alpine City standards and specifications. And we haven't on any of those references said where they can be found. I think this is the standard way of doing things. But those things can be found on the city's website. For example, right now, and for the last year, our tree guide has been on the front page of the Alpine City website. Eventually, we'll probably move that to the building departments or planning departments or engineering page, one of those pages. But it is fairly accessible now, and I don't see a need to say anything different, really.
Should they be at, what's the word? Not an addendum, but anyway, like a, at the end of the ordinance book, should those also be there? When we do the online version of this? Gosh, I don't want to call them attachments. What am I thinking of, guys? What's the word?
Parenthetical.
Yeah, that basically references, like at the back of the book, they have all of the different things that you've referenced in it.
I don't know how we would do that with our ordinances.
Okay. Well, I wonder if maybe it would be nice to have, this is just an idea, but even just like a list of hyperlinks, since these ordinances are all online now, right?
Yeah.
It would be really nice if maybe those were hyperlinks, or if there were a list of referenced documents at the end of this that had hyperlinks to them or something. That's just a thought.
No, that's actually a great idea. In our Alpine City ordinance, when you look at it online, if you could just click on it and go right to this document.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
We'd have to talk to the folks who do our ordinances online and see if that's possible.
Okay. Yeah, check that out.
It's a great idea.
Okay, let us know.
Just for your information, also, it's also available. It's already online in the planning section under the document section. They already have it there.
Perfect.
Okay. Good to know. Good. Any other questions? Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
I can do my first motion here.
All right. You guys are jumping right in. I love it.
Okay, I motion to recommend that ordinance 2020-11 be approved as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion by Troy Slade. Do we have a second?
Okay.
Okay, second by John McKay. And any discussion on the motion? Okay, all who are in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. And any opposed, say nay. Okay, so it passes unanimously. We are on a roll. Okay, so now we'll move to item E, which was the amended portion of our agenda tonight, which is the limitations on size of lots and structures in the city. And this is just a discussion. So we're not looking for a motion or anything. If I'm correct, we're just going to start discussing this. So Austin, are you on for this, or is this Jed again?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce this. So last week in City Council, there was a discussion. Basically, it was brought up, there's been a lot of development going on, and houses are getting bigger, accessory buildings are getting bigger, people are adding on to their houses, and those are also getting bigger. And it was brought up, do we need to be limiting the size of these things? A few years, let's see, what year was it? I think it was back in 2009. In 2009, the Planning Commission discussed what at the time they were calling a monster house ordinance. And so they had kind of the same idea. Should we limit the size of houses in Alpine? Because, houses should just keep getting bigger and bigger in Alpine. And so the idea was did we want to limit that? And in 2009, they discussed it in one meeting and decided they didn't really want to pursue it. But what one of the main talking points of their discussion was how Salt Lake City had done something, had adopted a similar ordinance. However, that ordinance was focused specifically on kind of the older parts of Salt Lake where there's historical homes that are, 100, 150 years old. And people didn't want to see those historical homes getting demolished and turned into these, big houses. And so I think the idea on that one was, if we limit the size, it's going to discourage people from coming in here and wanting to build over these historical areas. And so that was kind of why Salt Lake adopted that. Now, not all of the buildings that are technically historical. So only certain buildings, you need to have to check the historical preservation records to see which ones actually qualify as historical. But the idea was they didn't want the character of those neighborhoods to change from what they currently were. And so that was adopted there. But most cities usually don't limit the size of what you can build. The big thing is how small, do we want high density? Do we want apartments? Do we want townhouses? And Alpine is traditionally steered away from going higher density, but the idea of going lower density is not really something that Alpine has discussed other than back in 2009 when they discussed the Monster House Ordinance. So I guess this is here because the city council wanted the planning commission to kind of discuss, what should we be looking at this? And also, one of their concerns was how the height, so also the height of a home is also a concern. So, maybe a neighborhood was built 20 years ago, most of the residents moved in and there's a couple of empty lots there. And now they're just barely starting to build on those lots. In those instances, I guess there's been some concern that maybe they're bringing in fill and building these lots up higher, and then thus making the house higher as well. Which I don't know how valid that argument is. Jed can probably comment more on this from an engineering standpoint, but that was mentioned last week as kind of a concern. So that's kind of an introduction of why this is here for the Planning Commission. The city council just kind of wants to look at this.
Okay. So they didn't bring up any concerns. Did they bring up any financial concerns of, building monster houses that then when the economy goes down can create recession type situations with, vacant or property, that can't be sold in the area? Or any other, maybe Ed, you were there and listening. Can you think of any other concerns that they brought up?
Well, I believe that, Mayor Stout's main concern, or where he was really kind of in the extension of existing structures. I mean, he had a specific example that he was kind of referencing. And I think in that case, what has gotten, his concern about is that for a number of reasons. One is the extension to the house that is built actually dwarfs the size of the original house, right? So the house is on one thing, there's a small connection of a breezeway, and then there's a very large structure that's built kind of next to it. And I think he's concerned that that quote unquote extension
Aesthetically
kind of overwhelms the whole site that the house and the extension is built on. Because I've noticed, I think, and I might be wrong, because I'm trying to go through a lot of the ordinances and whatever. I mean, we do have restrictions for accessory buildings in terms of height. I think it's like 20 feet is the height of an accessory building, and then If you go higher than that, you've got to, have it set back a certain way and different things. Unless I don't see the same sort of things in place for like extensions to already existing structures, right? That
Yeah.
kind of dictate, other than the maximums that we have, right?
And they can't. There is any restriction on the percentage of the lot that they take up? That's just the setbacks, right? Anyone can build a home that fills a lot, right, to all the setbacks.
So if I can comment on what Ed was saying. So essentially an addition onto a home it's treated as if it was part of the home. So as if you were building a new home and this was part of that new home that was being built. And so the main restrictions that we have are setbacks and height. Corner lots are going to be more restrictive. You have a 30-foot setback off of each street. In our CR 20,000 and 40,000 zone, we have 30-foot rear setbacks. And so setbacks is kind of how that's been controlled in the past. So when someone builds an addition, it's like, well, does it fit in the setbacks of the existing home?
Yeah. There's no other ordinance. We already have a height ordinance. So what they're saying is, say 75, like the 75% of the homes in a certain neighborhood maybe have a certain height, and someone is building a home in that area that's much higher. Or Jed, do you want to speak to the fact of what if someone builds up their lot and changes the elevation of the lot?
I don't know if we have anything in our ordinance that says they can't, but I don't know why they would. I can't think of any instance in the city at all where somebody has purposely built their lot up. Actually, we do have an ordinance that it's the mass grading ordinance is what it's called. And that is when you're moving a lot of ground to build an area up or take an area down. So we do have an ordinance against that. But in general, you want your home to be at a certain elevation above the curb and gutter. And so you're not going to put your house, 10 feet higher.
Sometimes people do that to get a daylight basement. I've seen people build it up to get a daylight basement, and build up the driveway goes up and then they have the daylight basement. I suppose, is there any kind of a restriction in changing your lot so that the grade coming off of, any of the buildup is a certain slope or anything like that? Because that kind of comes into the runoff problems onto other properties and things like that.
True. So no, all we have is the mass grading ordinance. And honestly, it's been a while since I've looked at it. So I don't remember exactly the way it's worded.
Is that kind of what you're thinking of? I've seen that done before where, like I said, people build up. I can't think of an instance right now in the city, but as people, I think maybe part of the reason I only stayed for part of the meeting, but as older areas, like, for example, I'm right adjacent to Eastview Drive and some of the older areas downtown. One of the things that happens is people do come in and buy the older homes, and in any community, as you see the community age, you'll start to see some of those homes taken down and a new home built or added on to. And so maybe this is something that the community might start seeing more of. I don't know.
In terms of elevations, though, I don't see in any of those instances a reason to build the home, for example, 5 or 10 feet higher, because it would make your driveway unbuildable.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I'm just trying to think of what things they're coming up with. What about like the situation that Ed said Troy brought up as a concern? I thought maybe they were discussing more, the size of a home. I mean, the lot restricts the size of the home. I don't know. I don't have much appetite for controlling the size of homes, but do you guys have any other comments, reasons? I don't know.
Well, so, I mean, if somebody came into a neighborhood and then it seems like if you totally change the whole design of the building, that could adversely affect your neighbors.
Yeah, usually it raises your property value if they build a bigger house. next to
Right.
you.
Normally, if they make a nicer house, right, there's gonna be a
Exactly. I mean, I can see some odd looking things, but how do you say, like the one Ed described sounds like it's probably kind of an odd and maybe a little bit of an eyesore if they have this funny little house and then a breezeway and then this massive house built onto it. But I don't know if we have any ugly ordinance.
Well, I think that would be hard to define.
Exactly.
But I do think you could do something that said you couldn't alter the original elevation or
Yeah, by
anything
more than a
drastically
certain
on your
percentage.
redesign.
Right.
Though you want them to.
Yeah.
Maybe you do want them to.
Right.
Yeah,
Usually
I'm
sometimes
not
not.
sure. I'm just throwing out some thoughts.
Yeah.
And we could, and the other thing you could do would be to sit, but I worry that you're going to open yourself up to lawsuits that people want to do this. They own the property. They feel like they have the right to do it. So now they're going to sue because they don't agree with the ordinance. So we'd have to be sure that we had a firm footing to put that on.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after the city council meeting, I had the same sort of thing that, maybe there's some sort of restriction for height of extensions that, people can always, our ordinances can be argued for on an exception basis, right?
True.
It doesn't necessarily just restrict somebody. It means then they have to come and give a good reason as to why they're doing it.
Yeah.
The extension can exceed the existing maybe a percentage or something. One of the concerns I know that Mayor Stout has talked to me when I was asking him about this is garage door percentages. It just so happens in the example that he's using, the whole second floor of the extension of the building is garage, and so it kind of dominates the whole look of the lot and of the two structures that are putting together and that. And then finally, if you just get into site footprint percentage, how much of the site, can an extension do? But it's hard to ordinance or legislate out every idea that somebody could come up with that people aren't going to like.
Yeah.
It
might be helpful if the mayor could provide us a few examples that maybe we could kind of drive by. I mean, having this just recently added to the agenda, and I'm obviously just kind of brainstorming out loud here right now, trying to think of where this fits. I wouldn't mind, looking at a few examples and considering what some of the concerns are, if something needs to be put in place to protect citizens or property values or whatever.
So Jane, if you'd like, I could point out maybe a handful of examples that we've had in the past.
That'd be great.
years
Would you
of
mind just
structures.
emailing? Would you mind just emailing those to us sometime this week?
We could do it that way, sure. Yeah, however you want to do it.
Yeah, if you would just email it to us, then we could, if you don't mind this, then we could take some time to think about this, maybe go drive by a few examples. My initial feel is kind of like what some of you have expressed, that I don't see how you can legislate more than your basics, but if the mayor is concerned enough about it to ask us consider it, I think we should do a thorough consideration. Any other comments?
Is the way they're kind of getting away with this, so it sounds like we have some control over the outbuildings from what I've heard, right? Like, but is the way they're kind of getting away with it is making an extension then to the home, and then they can sort of get away, you know what I mean, with.
Yeah.
So the particular example that the mayor was pointing out, the one with like the 5 garage bays that Ed explained, and let me just maybe I'll pull up the county map.
Okay.
To show you the lot on screen, but not to point out someone's house online, but
yeah,
just so you can kind of see an aerial overhead of what we're talking about here. So this is the existing home. The addition was built on this other lot over here. So what happened is the owner bought a second lot. So you could put a home on this lot and that home would have to meet setbacks. And so what they've done is they've bought a second lot and they've combined it into one larger lot. So now it's a larger lot, and they've then adding on to the home. So they're extending the home out this way, and now the home comes out like this. And so that's essentially what's going on here is they've made their house essentially twice as big as what it used to be by buying the neighboring lot. So I don't know if that helps give you some context.
I mean, I really hate, I don't want to, feel like we're persecuting these people who have done everything, got the right approval.
And that's the thing, everything has been done.
Yeah, I mean,
there's nothing illegal going on here. Everything meets our ordinance. It's all
so I just want to make sure here. But if you look, it's a corner lot, and so facing the westerly direction, there's 2 large bay doors. Facing the southerly direction, there's 2 large bay doors, and then even diagonally from the corner, there's another large garage bay door, right? And so that whole corner is now dominated by garage doors.
Interesting.
Right.
And maybe that is a point of consideration.
Yeah, so I think that's what the mayor was concerned about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry. I was going to mention, on 200 North, just west of State Street, Main Street, there are 2 modern looking homes there, and all you see are the garages. I assume it's 2 modern looking homes. My husband and I have been debating whether it's 1 home with 4 garages facing the road or 2 homes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
From Westfield, or where Westfield come together.
Uh-huh. And so, yes. And so if the look of garages across the face, or, for aesthetics, which is important to the neighbors and their property values, that might be a consideration too, where a percentage of the street facing area might, again, I'm just trying to think out loud kind of as to.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we start getting into aesthetics, that's not something, unless you're in the Gateway Historic Zone and you're building a new office.
I agree.
That's not something that the city has traditionally dabbled in. And in fact, that's one of the main reasons why people have HOAs, is to control what the homes look like in their neighborhood, where you can put a fence, what kind of trees and plants you can plant, and how many garage doors, could be one of those.
Can face the street, or if they have to be side facing or things like that. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that could be in the CCNRs.
Yeah.
Yes. This particular builder also built a 3rd home just like this on a long, skinny Pioneer lot for his daughter. And it's the only way he could get that home there, because if you try and put the garages in the back, you have this long, skinny little driveway. It's hard to get trailers or trucks or do anything with the property. And that was the best way to lay out these 3 properties.
I think these are really cool looking houses. It's just funny. It's just this debate my husband and I keep having. He's like, that's 1 house with 4. I'm like, no, that's 2 houses. So just made me think of that when he said that they had, there was a lot of garage facing. I totally agree that dictating outside of these things is rough, unless like you mentioned in Salt Lake, where there's a reason to maintain a look of a certain area. Our Gateway Historic area, it would fit in. So I don't know. Do you think that we've touched on what the mayor is looking for? Again, should we think?
Yeah, I mean, I think your idea, maybe we'll send you some examples, and
Okay.
feel like, we want more discussion, and
Okay.
And honestly, this is such a new item, it's such a broad, I mean, what we're looking at is such a broad thing that,
And there's no rush, right?
Identifying what we're trying to get after, is it height? Is it the width of it? Is it, what's the big issue? What's the main concern?
Yeah, or is there a concern? And also, like I said, going forward, I think, Alpine has traditionally, we've been thinking about new development, new development, new development. And I think we are getting to the age where we will start to see some more remodels or homes taken down and new homes built, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, over the last 3 years, there has been a trend. I will say there has been a trend to buy for people building new homes. They will go in and they like the feel of an older neighborhood, and so they'll go ahead and they want to build a new home in that older neighborhood. And sometimes
And you get the landscaping, mature trees, things like that.
Yeah. And so that's something. And styles change over time. So some of these new homes coming into these old neighborhoods, they have a different style about them. And, is that something that the city's concerned about, or,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's great. Sufficient discussion for now. Let's follow up with some examples that maybe we can look at, and everybody can kind of think about that, and we can discuss it again. So I think we've come to the communications portion. Was there anything else, Austin, before we move on to communications?
No, I just want to welcome the new members of the Planning Commission, and it's good to have them, and I'm excited for their service. So
Yeah. Great. So communications at the end of the meeting is just for anything anyone here wants to talk about, or any kind of planning, or finding out who's going to be in town on what days, or do we have any holidays coming up that, we need to consider changing our meetings for, things like that. So, okay. So we need a motion for the approval of the meetings from May 5th.
Actually, I do have something for the minutes.
Oh, okay.
This is not actually coming from me, but it's coming from our minutes.
Oh, wow.
Sylvia.
Someone besides Sylvia. Oh, Sylvia sent it in. Oh, I was going to say.
She sent me an email saying there's an issue in the at the beginning on the attendance. I guess it looks like John McKay's name is mentioned twice in there. So
okay.
Wanted to make
and
sure.
He was only here once. John, got to work on that cloning.
I think if you read it, it has John McKay's name listed, and then to the side it says John McKay entered the meeting.
Could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
That's why
funny.
it says it twice.
Oh, okay.
Maybe there's a reason for it then. Okay.
Yeah, he entered the meeting after it was started or something.
Yep.
You were tardy, John. That's right.
I
You
never
were.
got a reply back from my request of whether bag the meeting or show up late.
Yeah. Oh, well, we're glad you came late. It worked out. Okay. So with those comments, or whoever makes the motion, if you think so, do you think that Marla is saying that there doesn't need to be a change there then, because it's a comment that he was in attendance, and then the next comment was that he entered the meeting. Is that right, Marla?
I'll take a look at it and see what the verbiage looks like, and see if it needs to be changed.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
Sure, I motion that the minutes from our last meeting be approved. Will that work?
Yep. Any second on the motion?
Second it.
Okay, John, a second by John. And all those who are in favor of this motion, say aye.
Right.
Aye. And any opposed? Nay. Okay, so the minutes have been approved. And we can adjourn this public meeting. That was my mallet or whatever it's called.
Gavel.
My gavel, yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for coming.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.